Hello, this is Luke Turner, and welcome to, I believe, episode 11 of Building a Web App from Scratch. So today we're going to continue working on some UI things. Let's take a look at our notes file here, get ourselves situated. Last time we spent a while working on the Today page as part of this Design and UI Patterns checkbox. And today we're going to be proceeding with that, maybe working on some other pages. Seems I'm having some bitrate issues. Hopefully that works itself out. I added a few more things to this notes page as well in between sessions, as I think of them. And it really does feel like, although the app is getting to the point where it's 80% done, the core functionality is done, there's still that last 20% of, convenience features and making it actually a friendly and pleasant app to use, which is going to be kind of what we need to focus some time on. Anyway, let's first just get this stuff started. First, we're going to run the database. Then we're going to run the client-side code bundler. Then we're going to run the server. Okay. And then I'm going to open that up in a web browser. So the functionality we did last time is basically on this page, the Today page. We can add sets. And then for those sets, we can configure the number of reps and how many kilograms. And, we don't have to submit anything. If we refresh the page, those values are still present because it's using Ajax to save those to the database dynamically whenever the value changes in the inputs. If we look at some of the other pages, though, they still have not great styling, let's just say, very simple. And the settings page as well, there's not really a whole lot going on in here. We're not actually using the Bulma classes for these inputs, these selects, things like that. But actually, there's another thing that I want to take a look at, and that's using pug mixins to kind of abstract away some of our Bulma styled components. And basically what a pug mixin is it's sort of like a function in pug that allows you to build an abstraction around some little snippet of pug. And you can have values going into that, which can be JavaScript values in this title example. Or you can also have blocks, which I guess this example has as well, where it's just like a block of pug that can go into the pug, kind of similar to React children. You can think of it that way. So let's take a look at the Today page that we did, and we can kind of see, or I can show you what I'm talking about here. So we have all of these classes, and like say a select, for instance, there's a select HTML element. And then in order to style it properly with Bulma, we have to put that inside a select span, a span with the select class. And we have to put that inside a div with a control class. And we have to put that inside a div with a field class. So we have a bunch of these kind of layers, all just to make a regular old select. And each time we want to do a select, we're kind of going to need to have all of those things in there. And so why not create a mixin where we can just say, put in a select, and then it's going to generate, these classes for us. And if we decide that we want to change kind of how that works, we can do that in one place and it'll affect everywhere in the app. Now, there is one thing I want to talk about here as well. I want to talk a little bit about abstraction and dry. You might have heard of dry, DRY, don't repeat yourself. And that's kind of a, a mental model for thinking about programming, where it's like you don't want to have the same chunk of code in a bunch of places. There's also an acronym called WET, which is kind of a tongue-in-cheek alternative, write everything twice. And the idea of WET is it's like you write something once, you write it again, and only after that, when you're doing it the third time, do you really feel the need to try to build an abstraction around that and prevent that duplication. It's kind of pushing back on the idea of don't repeating yourself, period, and saying sometimes it's good to repeat yourself. Now, both of these acronyms and kind of methodologies or mental models, they can work. It's not like one is right and one is wrong. Obviously, they're both really oversimplified. And ultimately, it's like if you use it right, it works fine. If you use it wrong, you can actually, by mistakenly thinking you're doing engineering according to some principle, you can actually be making your program worse. So kind of a simple example here, like say you have let's see, trying to think of a good example. So say you have a timeout in your code that is 60 seconds, right? And so somewhere in your code, you have like the number 60. And then somewhere else in your code, you have a list, say a table that you're rendering to the user, and you want that to only have 60 elements in it. So in that area of your code, you also have the number 60. They're both the same number. And technically, by writing that number in both places, you're repeating yourself, right? You're including the same number in both places. But actually, the intent and the usage of that number is totally different. So, what somebody would naively do is like write this. And get yourself a variable for that number and then use that variable in both places and think that you're not repeating yourself. Obviously, for an example like this with just a simple number, it's like, well, that's stupid. The variable name is even longer than the actual number is. Why would I ever do that? I have actually seen people do this if they have like a linter where it has like a no magic numbers rule. And so they have to give every number a name and they'll just like give it a name like this, which is meaningless, versus using the actual number. You might as well just disable the linter rule, which there's nothing wrong with that. But what people don't often realize quite as easily is when you're making functions and building modules, people will do this same thing at a bigger scale. They'll have a chunk of logic, maybe 10, maybe 100 lines, that's the same or similar in two different places, and they'll build an abstraction that separates that out and reuse that abstraction in both of those places without ever realizing that those places are only coincidentally related. They're not actually using the same underlying concepts. They're just using the same code. And that's like when you can get into a real problem with the don't repeat yourself idea. What you're not trying to do is don't repeat any code. There's nothing wrong with repeating code. What you are trying to do is not expressing the same domain concepts, the same truisms, you could say, in multiple places of your source code at a time. And again, it's not about the code, it's about what the code is expressing. And kind of another way to think about that is, if you're changing the value, will it always be changed in both places, or will it only sometimes be changed in one place and sometimes in another place? In this example where we have this 60 number, you might change the HTTP timeout You might change the length of the rendered table, but you're never going to be changing both of those at once. They're two totally independent values, right? Obviously. But when your code gets a lot more complicated, that obviously becomes less obvious. And you might be thinking, well, this piece of database query logic, it's like it'll always be changed the same. But then maybe actually when it's used in your analytics pipeline, you should be using a different function, even if it looks the same under the hood, because you're going to need to change that more frequently. And in your transaction processing pipeline, you have exactly the same logic in a different function because you know that that's going to be changed at a different cadence. And you're going to have to be a lot more careful about those changes versus analytics, things like that. And being aware of those meaningful differences between the usages of your functions is important when you're trying to build abstractions and to avoid overbuilding those. On the flip side, kind of the issue with the wet and the idea of not being afraid to repeat yourself is that if you express the same concept in multiple places, just thinking like, well, I don't need to make it dry, you're opening yourself up for bugs, right? People might not realize that when they're changing some piece of logic, they also have to change it in X, Y, and Z places. That's what you're kind of trying to avoid by building these abstractions. Okay, so having said that, I'm kind of interested to try using some mix-ins with Pug. And kind of the idea here is we're going to be building an abstraction around using Bulma classes to style our HTML. So instead of having to know each time, okay, we're going to put this class, this class, this class, and structure the HTML like this, we can just use this mix-in abstraction to create a nicely styled element. And what exactly that looks like under the hood doesn't really matter. Okay, so one of the things we have to figure out if we're using mix-ins is how that actually works. So like for instance, let's make a mixins.pug file, just a single file here. And then in the layout, we're going to import that file. I think let's check the Pug syntax for import here, or include, I guess. Include mixins.pug. And then in the mixins file, we can start to try to define some of our mixins here. So let's look at the syntax for that. Let's just make a simple mixin. So one of the ones I was thinking about doing to start with is like an icon mixin. And kind of the idea of the icon mixin is we're going to have like an icon name or something like that, which is going to indicate which icon to render. And what that's going to render then is, if we go to the Today page, something kind of like this. But instead of ti-x here, it's going to use a class which is the based on that icon name. ti-plus icon name. And we could potentially have like a size parameter here as well. I think for everything here, though, it's all icon small. Let's see. Icon small, icon small, icon small. So until we need a different size, we're just going to assume that we're always going to use icon small. Okay, so let's give this a shot here. So if we go to like say here, this would be plus icon. That's kind of the syntax for calling a mixin in Pug. Plus icon, chevron left. And we can comment this out for now. And let's confirm kind of that that's what we're looking at here. It's like plus, and then the mixin, and then parentheses, and then the value. Should be good. So now let's see if that works. It does work. And so that in theory is building an abstraction around the idea of a icon in Bulma using the tabler icon's icon name. But there's kind of another thing here that I want to include in this abstraction. And that's the idea of what is the meaning of this icon in my app in particular. With something like chevron left, it's like, well, it's pretty obvious. It's an arrow to the left. We can probably just keep that one the same. But there's other things that's less obvious. Like down here, like for assisted, and let's illustrate this here. So if I add a new assisted pull-ups, this icon here, the life buoy, that's like the icon for an assisted weight parameter. So we don't necessarily want to have to remember that every time we use this parameter. And we also don't necessarily want to have this duplicated in a bunch of places where if someday we want to say actually assisted is going to be a cloud or whatever, that we have to change it and like do a find and replace throughout our code base. Wouldn't really be that big of a deal because we don't have a huge code base. But building that kind of abstraction is, what I want to take some time to do, just so that we get our code a little bit easier to comprehend. So basically what I want to do then is define a mapping in this icon mixin between the application icon name and the actual icon that's going to be used from the tabler icons pack. Also, if we ever want to switch off of tabler icons, this will make that easier as well. So let's see, I think the format for code is like that, yeah, with a dash. So like if I do something like this, dash var icon equals so say I do like assisted is life buoy, right? Did I spell that right? Feels like a weird word to spell. Yeah. Okay. And that would just be icon class. And then we could also say like, so the idea here is then we would index into this object with the icon name to basically look up the icon class for a given icon name. And we could also say, I think this has to be indented here. We could say like if not icon class equals icon name. So in other words, if there is no mapping defined for it, we're going to default to the name that was actually passed in. Okay, so now if we refresh this, it should continue working, you would think, but apparently not. What are we complaining about here? Surely not the single quotes, right? Let's see. Oh, I think I know what it might be. I think this might have to be indented like on a new line. Like this. Let's try that. Yeah, okay. So this icon is still working. And now if I go over here, first of all, we can kind of get rid of this span.icon. Okay, so this is actually interesting because it's a different, the parent span is a little bit different from what we have here. So for starters, let's actually get rid of that span. We're going to take that out of the abstraction just to kind of make what we're doing easier to think about. And we might kind of add that back into the abstraction later. And instead it would be more like this for that one. And then if we go down here, like this TI life buoy would become icon assisted. And let's see what that looks like. Okay, yeah, so now we have that, that icon there without actually having to use the life buoy name in there. And we can easily change that if we want to. And so we can do the same thing for these others as well. And we also start to notice the benefit of doing an abstraction where we all of a sudden don't even need this if conditional at all. We can just do like this plus icon parameter.id. And we'll be able to get rid of all of this once we add these mappings into the icon mixin. So weight is a simple one. That's just weight. And then distance is ruler 3. Okay. Yep, assisted weight distance. So then we can get rid of all this. And if we refresh here, see that it's still working. Oh, missing a comma here. Whoops. Okey-doke. Yeah, so like the weight icon is still there. And so then we can kind of use the same icon thing down here as well. Like this, duration. Again, we can just do parameter.id and we just have to add duration mapped clock. And then we can get rid of this. And then intensity here is mapped to activity. And this would be this again. And so one thing I'm thinking here, we have this same plus icon parameter ID thing in a bunch of places. In theory, if we wanted to build our abstraction further, we could say like an icon for a parameter, and it would actually just receive the whole parameter object, and it would know to get the ID. But this should be fine. And the other thing I'm kind of thinking is like if we have, so kind of one of the problems with Pug mixins is there's like these blocks, right? But as far as I know, there's not really a possible, like there's not really a way to, I'm just kind of looking at the code here before I say this, but I don't think there's a way to have multiple blocks. But I wonder if you could actually have your parameter value be some pug in there. Let's actually try this. So let's make a mixin where it's like one of these controls is kind of what I'm thinking here. Mixin parameter control. Let's just call it that for now. And so what this is going to have is the field, And then in there, it's going to have the control, which has an icon on the right and the left. Or maybe let's actually try just calling this control. And we could have like a right icon, left icon, and then the block of content. And so like this input here would be the block of content. We would just call that block. This if stuff goes away. And then here we would have something like class equals empty string, or let's say class equals control. I wonder, actually, let me look at Pug here for a moment. Attributes. Class attributes. Okay, so you can do an array of classes. Or it can be an array of objects. So that's kind of what we want to do here. So let's have our class be an array of objects where control is true. And maybe I need to quote that. And has icons right is right icon. And we could put like a not there. And has icons left is left icon. Okay. And then here we would have like this. We would say like if right icon, then in here we would have right icon. And if left icon, then in here we would have the left icon. And this is left icon. And this is right icon. Okay. Okay, and so, and then this I think is like equals thing like that. Let's see what this looks like now. So I'm going to try to use this mixin for this whole thing. I guess it's going to kind of have to be this whole block. So it would be like plus control. And if we look at the mixin thing again, I don't think we can do named parameters. Yeah, doesn't seem like it. So we kind of just have to say, okay, let's actually do left icon, then right icon. That way the name of or the order of the parameters matches the order that they get rendered in. So we're going to say left icon for now, just say null, right icon, null. And then the content of that is going to be like all of this. Starting at the conditional point. And then we can take these out for now and kind of see what this looks like. I'm curious. And take this one out as well. The select, actually, yeah, that should be fine. Okay. Let's refresh here. Okay, so it's still rendering the things. If we add one where it's everything, the select is still at a drop down. So it's kind of doing what we expect. And now we sort of need to re-add those icons here. So the left icon is just going to be this every time, right? In this case, that's what it is. In this case, that's what it is. In this case, that's what it is. And in this case, it's a number. So that's kind of a weird case. So we can just add a condition for that for now. We don't need to put that in the actual icon mixin. We could say like if parameter ID is reps, then this would be can I do like span? $? I don't know if that's going to work. I feel like that's probably not going to work. Yeah, so how do I wonder if I can do that. Maybe I have to use that syntax where it would be like if parameter.id equals reps, then span, else that. No, it's not happy with that either. Let's actually just do this for now. I'm curious to see if this works to start with. Icon is not a function. So can I not do a mixin as a property to another mixin or as a parameter? See, this is a little bit of what I'm concerned about with Pug. Is whether it might not actually be possible to use, I don't know what you would call it, like Pug values as a parameter to a thing. So like, what if I do this? Like just a Pug thing. Doesn't work. So it has to be a JavaScript value. Yeah, that's kind of frustrating. So what we could do here, and we have to kind of decide whether or not we think this is worth it, but we could just have the parameter ID value itself be the thing. And then here, this would be like plus icon left icon and plus icon right icon. What I don't like about this is it's going to be hard to build certain types of abstractions without having the ability to put like actual HTML elements into these parameters. You know, in programming languages, especially like if you think about a functional programming language, there's this idea of values and having different values be kind of reusable wherever, if that makes sense. Or you could think about it as like expressions versus statements. And the impression that I'm getting is like with Pug, you could say that these HTML things like div.field is sort of like a statement. It can only be used in certain places. And we're trying to use it as like an expression by putting it as a parameter of this function. Sometimes there's like a special syntax for taking a statement and putting it, like making it into a parameter or an expression. Like wrapping it in parentheses is one thing that works sometimes. Kind of curious to see if that actually does it. No. Yeah, I mean, it might not be possible. For now, let's just not do it because we don't need it quite yet. And so then we have like a problem where we would say like if left icon equals weight, then we would need to do like a span pound sign, else that. And we have to put this logic actually into the component, even though that doesn't really make sense in terms of the abstraction, because we can't put it here because you can't actually put that span into this control parameter is kind of what I'm thinking. And so let's actually see what this looks like before we get too much further here. So that's working for some of these. Oh, that should be reps. Okay, so now that's working, right? We have all of the icons in there. We don't have the right icons anymore though. And so like for the right icons, we would, maybe they're going to put an actual icon in here, or maybe they're going to do some text. And, we could have like an icon type parameter or something like that. But I think we're just going to say like, if the icon is one of this certain set of values, then just put it in as text. Otherwise, use it as an icon. So it would be like if right icon is, let's see what values we have here. So there's unit, min, and reps. So min, and maybe I wonder if we could do an includes here or if it's going to complain about that. Let's try this. That includes right icon. Then we're going to do span right icon, else an actual icon. So let's see if that works for min. And it does not. Oh, probably because I didn't actually put that in here yet. Let's just try this. Min. Okay, so that does work. And we'll have to make sure to remember to populate that. But so we've got min, we've got kilograms, we've got kilometers, we've got reps, and let's take a look at the convert unit function to see what else it can return. So there's min, kilometers, kilogram, pound, and mile. And actually, this is a case where really it should be LB and MD. So I might actually put another conditional in here where it's like else if right icon equals mile span my, else if right icon equals pound span LB. Okay. Oh yeah, right. No colons there. What is this, Python? No. Okie doke. So that should be working. Now we just need to pass that value through in the today page. So here the value is unit. So I might have to make a bit of a function here where it's like bar right. Well, maybe not. So the right icon is going to be if the parameter is weight or distance, it's going to be unit. And the unit is this. Why is this not... Oh, because I'm missing a colon here, so it's going to break the syntax highlighting. Otherwise, if the parameter is distance, it's going to be min, or duration, I mean. Otherwise, parameter duration, min. Otherwise, parameter intensity. If the parameter is intensity, there's none. So that one will kind of be the base case. And this one down here is like if the parameter ID is reps, parameter.id equals reps, null. Okay. Let's see how that looks. So reps have reps. This has kilograms. Assisted also has kilograms. Kilometers for distance. Minutes for duration. And then nothing for intensity. Seems good. And if I go to settings and I change these to pounds and miles, and I go back to today, it's, LB and MI. Cool. So now we can get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this, and get rid of this. Okay, so now, you can kind of see how this control has helped us to express what we're doing a little bit better. We have the control parameter, we have the left icon and the right icon, and then underneath that, we have whatever that control actually is. It's still a bit messy because we have all these conditionals, of course. But kind of the nice thing, though, is that now we can actually use that control anywhere else that we want to put icons on things as well. Like the left, the right icon inside the control. Anywhere else we want to do that, we can reuse the same control mix-in. On this particular page, there isn't another place that we want to do that. So there's nothing really to reuse, but it's a possibility. And mostly I'm kind of just trying to figure out how useful these pug mix-ins actually are, because I've never used pug before in a project, and we'll see how much these mix-ins provide benefit versus just kind of being a leaky abstraction, which makes things even more painful than it otherwise would be. Okay, so the other one I kind of want to do is a select. And so we can see patterns here where it's like span.select and then select. And then there's, this is like the block. Or instead of a block, we could have it be an array. Let's try that. And then this has like data on change, data signals, data bind, and name. And up here we have those same properties. And then like here we have this div.control. This could actually be like plus control. Null, null, because we don't have any icons. And let's see what that looks like actually. Yeah, seems fine. Okay, so let's make a mix and for a select here. And so this is going to have a name, an on change, signals, bind, and really like we would call this probably something along the lines of, let's call it name, signal name, on change, and default value. Okay, so the name is name. The on change is just the on change. The signals here is actually going to be the signal name. Something like that. Plus signal name plus that. And the value here is the default value. And the bind is going to be the signal name. So basically what we're saying is, we're defining the select. And then we can have something where it's like values. And each value in values, there would be like value.id and value.name. And it's selected when default value equals value.id. Okay, so kind of talking through this now. We have the select. The name is just the name of it, which is used when it's in a form. The signal name is what signal this select is bound to. We also use the signals declaration to define a default value, which is like an initial value for the signal, for the signal name. And then we also iterate through each of the values and define an option and pre-select the option with the default value there as well. So here kind of the meaning of some of the stuff used in these selects becomes a little bit more obvious. Let's see what this looks like now. So we would do like select, exercise, and then the signal name, which is this. And then the default value, which is this. Oh no, the on change, and then the default value. I might actually change the order of those here. Default value, then on change. Okay, so the on change is going to be this, which needs to be in quotes. And then we have exercises as the actual list of values. Okay, let's see what that looks like here. So now, these are selected. If I change one of these, it successfully changes Basically what that signal is supposed to be changing is this, which parameters are exposed, which is happening. And then also if I look at the network tab, if I switch this to something, we can see that it's doing the post correctly. And if I refresh the page, let's switch to something that it wasn't before. Stretching, refresh, and it's persisted. So that seems to be working. And now we can reuse that select thing down here as well, actually. So like plus select. And here the name is intensity. The signal name is just null. The default value is set.parameters.intensity. And the on change is this. And the values are low, medium, and high. Except for each of these, we actually need it to be an object where it's like the ID, low, name, low, like so. And let's copy that. And we've got medium. And then we've got high. And, in theory, these three options could also be stored in our code somewhere. Kind of similar to how we have like the default list of parameters. There could be like a list of values for the intensity data type. But for now, I'm just going to put them right in here. And we're going to need to make sure to remember to handle the case where now there is no data signal. And the reason there is no data signal here is just because there's nothing else on the page that depends on this value, so we don't need to track it in a signal at all. So let's go to the mixins here. So if signal name is could just do like signal name, then that, otherwise false. And here, same thing, signal name, otherwise false. And if we have something like this could just be like signal name. Like here, if signal name is falsy, then it's going to go to false. If it's truthy, then it's going to just return signal name. So we can use an or here and accomplish the same thing. So let's see if that works. Refresh the page. If we change this to medium, it does the post. It updates there. If we refresh the page again, it loads the default value correctly. Cool. So we're able to kind of reuse this select stuff. And then we can do the same thing down here as well. So inside the control, we can actually do like dot control or plus control. Null, null. And I don't know if we even need to do that. It could just be like that. And then we have a plus select, name, exercise, signal name, set new exercise ID. Oh, and not like that, just like this. Default value is just an empty string. I'll just use double quotes. And then the on change is this. Okay, and then the values here are just exercises again. And then we can get rid of this whole thing. And let's see how that works. So that does work. we'll notice though that it selects this one of the default values right away, which it didn't do before. And kind of the reason for that, I guess, what is the reason for that? It's probably something to do with this. Like, what if I do this? Now it's selecting the one at the end. Let's see what we actually have in here. So like these options, what does that mean? I don't even, oh, I guess that's that. Oh, so it looks like the problem here is this data signals thing is not, like if the signal itself is just an empty string, then the default value, I feel like we might want quotes around this kind of a thing, something like that. Yeah, okay, so now that's, you know, properly showing the default value as being an empty string instead of just being like an invalid JavaScript structure. And if I do something here where it's like 12 or 23, I guess, and refresh the page, that default value is loaded in properly as well. And like same thing here. Yep. Okie doke. And then if I, you know, pick something, then it adds it. Okay. So I think there's some other place where we use select as well, right? Let's see in the exercise page. No, these are checkboxes. That's not a select. Let's actually just do a quick search here. Select. And we're going to exclude all CSS files. And we're going to exclude everything, and let's just do exclude public. Okay. These are, you know, database selects, mix and select, select. So here's two places in the settings where we use selects that we can update to use this new thing. So let's actually do that. And that'll kind of get us started on getting the settings page looking consistent with the rest of this stuff as well. So we've got plus control, plus select. Name is preferred units weight. And signal name is null. Default value is going to be this. And on change is going to be null as well. And then the values is going to be an array. ID pound, name, pounds. And again, you know, we could pull these out of the view and actually put them into code, which might actually be a good idea for these units. Maybe I'll do that when I'm done with this. So we've got pounds and kilograms, and then I can get rid of this. I can do the same thing down here. except with kilometers and miles. So it's kilometers and miles. And preferred units dot distance, and this is distance. Okay. If we go to the settings page now, what do we got? Duplicate attribute null is not allowed. What? So name. Oh, so first of all, that shouldn't be like that, I guess. Okay. So now if I switch this to kilograms and kilometers and click update, and then I go back to the today page, we've got kilograms and kilometers. And the default values are selected here as expected. Cool. So we've got our select abstraction, and this is now looking a little bit better as well. What else might be useful to have a mixin for? I mean, one thing that comes to mind is like these fields, like a horizontal field. But that might be a case where, like, yes, we have a horizontal field here, and we might also have one in the settings page, but ultimately the fact that those two things might end up being similar is really more of a coincidence than the fact that they're actually the same things. So I'm going to leave those unabstracted for now. The exercises page, we just kind of need to redo that whole thing. So we'll not worry about that quite yet. Okay, let's just say that this is a good stopping point to put in a commit. So what are we doing? We're including the mixins. And I included the mixins in the layout so that we don't have to include that in each individual view. With Pug, it doesn't really have it doesn't have modules, right? Like in a programming language, a lot of times you have a module with sort of a namespace that encapsulates some functions and variables, and then you can import those references from that module into another module. With Pug, it's more just like, you can take one Pug file and just like put it right into another Pug file. Just splat it right in there. And that's what this include is doing. And so by doing that include here in the layout, it's like as though all of these mixins were defined in every file that's then using that layout, if that makes sense. Okie doke. So we're going to add the mixins, the settings page updates, and the today page updates. And we can call this create icon, control, and select mixins. Okay. So let's actually do the units thing that I just mentioned as well. So if we go to exercises here, it's probably the same place where we have these other unit functions. I'm going to export function unit. Let's call it all units. And this is going to return an array where we've got like name mile, ID mile, and we could also have like type distance and short form version is just mi. Okay. And so with that, it's like we're defining the mile unit in like a first class way that we can reuse in our views without having to keep track of it in a bunch of different files. And then we would do the same thing for like kilometer, ID km, short form km, type distance, kilogram, ID kg, short form kg, and this would be type weight, I guess. And then we have pound. And I think these are actually pluralized. Pounds, ID pound, short lb. So kilograms, kg, kg, pounds, pound, lb. Yeah. Okay, so let's see then if we were to use that in some of our views, right? So like in the settings page here, like this, instead of being this thing, it would be like all units dot filter unit well, let's call it weight units. And then we would have another one called distance units. And then when we're calling the view in the index page here, under settings, we would have those parameters in here. So weight units is all units dot filter unit dot type equals weight. And then we also have distance units. And we could, say like units equals all units, and then just reuse that here and here, because filter doesn't mutate the array. So now in the settings page, if we refresh this, oh, whoops, what did I do there? I think I accidentally deleted that user line when I was copy pasting. Okay, yeah, so we have weight units, kilograms, pounds, distance units, kilometers, miles. If I switch these, do update, we get pounds and miles, switch them back, refresh. Yeah, seems like that's working. Cool. So kind of the other place that we could use this is in the actual icon thing here is what I'm thinking. Like here, we've got min and reps. And then here we would say like, else if all units dot find unit dot id equals right icon. Then it would be span that thing dot short, right? And then we would need to pass all units into the, see, this is kind of an example actually where it's a little bit funky because this all units variable needs to be visible in our view, but we don't necessarily know where this control is going to be used because it's a mix-in. It could be used in any page. So right now, like we know that that's only used in the today page. It's only going to actually take on these values in the today page. But it's kind of weird. There might be a good way to avoid that problem. But for now, I'm just going to do like this. And then we're going to need to explicitly pass this in on each page where it might take on that value. Not ideal. Ideally, like that all units would maybe be passed in a middleware where it's accessible to the templates or the views for any page automatically. But we can worry about that later. All units. We're going to call the function here, similar to how we do for all parameters. And let's see if that works or if that's going to blow up in our face here. Seems like it's working. We've got our kilograms, our kilometers. And if I like go over here and I change this to kilometers too, and refresh this, that these get updated automatically. So these are actually using that short syntax for all of those units based on this all units function. Okay, let's add a commit for that. And let's see if we can figure out that other thing. So let's look at ExpressPug documentation here. I'm not sure which of these pages we're going to want. Okay. Doesn't really say, but so we're going to kind of have to implement this ourselves a little bit. So let's do an app.use rec, or no, another function in here. Let's just copy this. So we're defining a middleware. And what this middleware is going to do, and this is also going to have a next function. We're actually going to set a property on rec called like view bag. And this is going to be like the default values for things that we're going to want to put in every single potential template. And like, for instance, we could do all parameters in here. These are things where they're not going to differ based on the page or the controller, so we can just pass them in every time. They're sort of like global values and all units. And then we're also going to need to take this request with session thing, and we could add a view bag parameter here, which is record string any. And then when we render pages, we would do like ... rec.viewBag, like so. And then we could take out all parameters and all units. And we just need to remember to kind of use that view bag whenever we're rendering something. So if I do a search here for render, we would like put that here. And we could abstract this into a function as well if we wanted. Maybe I'll do that later. And like here, there's a little bit of redundancy because we have all units and now we also have these other units things, but that's all right. There's nothing wrong with that really. Okay. So now we can safely use that mixin in any file without there being a problem. And let's see. Oh, I forgot something important here. We have to also call next in our middleware. Okie doke. And I'm going to include this in the same commit as the thing from before. So this is like allow or define define list of all units and use in views. Sure. Seems fine. Okay, so, we've made some progress on what you might call drying up our application, using these mix-ins, kind of having some of these abstractions in place. And that's great. There's still a lot of that we could do, like in this file. But I think I'm going to switch back to doing a little bit more UI stuff before the end of the day here. So we have these other pages as well. The settings page, manage exercises page. Let's start with the settings page because that's fairly simple. Okay. So ultimately, one of the things here is I kind of think that these make more sense as like a horizontal form, which we have sort of an instance of down here as an example. So it's like field.isHorizontal. And then we also need this field label class, which we haven't done here. Field.isHorizontal, right? Yeah, and then div.fieldLabel.isNormal. That goes in there. And isHorizontal goes down there. Refresh. Well, that doesn't feel quite right, does it? So what's going on here? So this is, the field label is flex grow. So the horizontal, so really we should just be constraining the width of this container a lot is kind of what this is feeling like to me. Let's look at Bulma here and see if there's something it has to say about that. Horizontal form. Oh, so we also need a field body. And then another field? What the heck? That's confusing. Okay, so let's try this. Div.fieldBody, and then div.field. Like that. Yeah, okay. Okay. And then actually we would want to do the same thing here, right? Like I don't think we did that here. So that would be like this. Refresh. And then I think we could actually get rid of this class then. Yeah, okay. I mean, that's fine, right? It's consistent. It might not line up perfectly with the thing above it, but arguably we don't necessarily actually want it to line up perfectly with the thing above it because that can be kind of confusing in and of itself. So maybe I will make a, I'll make a mixin for this as well. Why not, right? So mixin horizontal field. And it's going to have a label text. Label. And then it's going to have a block of content. And so then in the today page, we could do this as like plus horizontal field, add new set. And then inside that is the control, like so. And that works fine. And then under settings as well, we could use the same horizontal field here. Weight unit. Get rid of all that. And the same thing here. Get rid of all that. Or no. Yeah, like that. And this would be distance unit. Okay. And then, I mean, here, if we want this to be lined up, it would be more like this. Horizontal field, control, and then the input button. Cool. Add horizontal field, mix in, and use in settings page. Okie doke. So settings page, I mean, what else are we going to do with this page? You know, we're going to add some more functionality to it later, but in the meantime, it's pretty much done. There's not a whole lot of UI here to actually fiddle with. Let's look now at the manage exercises page. I'm going to do a quick time check. Got about a half an hour left. So here we have, first of all, this create new exercise chunk here. We can update this to also use the horizontal field stuff, you know, make it consistent. It's under exercises. So here we have, do we really need it in a box? No, let's get rid of that. And here we would have like horizontal field, exercise name, and then there would be like control, and then the input name. And then here we would also have horizontal field, control, and the submit. And we could call this create new exercise, and maybe even get rid of this heading. And yeah, okay. Well, first of all, that looks a little bit weird because this needs to have a dot input on it. And like we can see that here as well, where that is going the full width with the input, just like the input here is going the full width of the containing element. I do feel like maybe we actually want that send button to be like to the right of the original thing, which if we kind of use this example here, let's see, is this, okay, so there's from, oh, I see. So underneath the field body, there could potentially be multiple fields. And that's something that this horizontal field component here doesn't really handle. It assumes that there's just this one field. So we could leave that as is. Or we could actually make the block not include that so that somebody could have multiple fields beneath there. Or, you know, if we wanted to not do that, we could have like another parameter here. But I think just taking that out of the horizontal field thing is going to be the way to go. So now whenever we use that, we need to have like a dot field and then the thing. And over here, same thing, dot field, then the thing, dot field, then the thing. Okay. Those three, and then down here as well, need a dot field. And this will allow us to then define multiple fields inside that block if we want to do so, which for this exercise's case, we do want to do so. We want it to be like this. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Cool. So now we have the exercise name, the field, and then a create new exercise button on the same, you know, horizontal row. And if we shrink it, what happens, it kind of, at a certain point, it switches to the mobile view where the horizontality is replaced with, you know, having the elements on top of each other. And let's, just to make sure, let's look at the today page. So that one still looks fine. Settings page still look fine. Okay. And I mean, really, like these as well, that could all be put into a single row. I'm not going to worry about that though at the moment. Let's see, we can call this update field mixin and use in exercises page. And then the other big thing in the exercises page, of course, is these cards are pretty weird, right? Honestly, I think just a plain table is going to suit our purposes a lot better here. I think Bulma has like a table. You know, we could use another type of smart grid thing. Maybe that's a good option, actually. Like smart grid. yeah, let's just use this for now. So if we go to exercise is plural, div.grid, div.cell. So in this case, it's like this is not really going to work actually, because I need to know in advance the number of rows or the number of columns in each row. So we would be using a fixed grid and not a smart grid. So let's do that. Fixed grid. We could also use just a plain HTML table too, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just going with the grid approach. And it would be like has, I guess to start with, just has two calls, right? Because there's going to be the name, and then there's going to be like an edit button. And then for each exercise, we have a cell with the name. And then we have a cell with the edit button. And that's not no equals there. Let's see what that looks like. That's interesting. The interval sprints one doesn't. Oh, they're not. What's going on here? So fixed grid. Oh, so it's got to be fixed grid and then a grid underneath it. Oh, Bulma. Div.grid. And is that the same thing we have here where it's like fixed grid and then dot grid? Yeah, okay. Okay, so now we have this. And trying to think of what else we might want to include here. For now, I don't know if there's anything. We're going to be adding more functionality to this page though. So like this edit is going to be like if we go to one of these edit pages, it's got settings here, and then it also has historical data. I want to split those out into two separate pages. So there's going to be like an edit button and like a view data button. Also, like note the thing with this table with these objects, we're going to fix that. That's on the to-do list, but it's not the current focus, so I'm just going to leave it. And this cell, the edit cell, we're going to say that has a fixed width. I guess if we look at smart grid here, it would be like, should be probably just the smallest width is call min1. See what that does. Didn't really do anything. What does that is call min1 thing even do? Does it do anything? Does that have to go on the actual grid? That isn't really what we want. If so, oh, it doesn't like the Plug is so picky. It doesn't like the spaces at the ends of things. So did that actually do anything? Grid. Yeah. Okay, but that's not what I want though. I want these columns to have a fixed width. Yeah, okay. So now they have a fixed width. I mean, I don't know if that will be great. I mean, in the mobile view, it should be okay. It's a little bit odd though. This is where something like a table might actually work better. But for now, this is fine. And I feel like this edit button, I'm actually going to use an icon here, maybe. So if I do like plus icon, and then let's look at the tabular icons again. Tabular icons. Edit. Yeah, this is the one. The standard edit icon. Refresh. Okay, so I mean, it's working. Yeah, maybe like that. Well, I don't know. For now, let's just do the icon. We don't want it to be blue, though, is one of those things. So a lot of these links are this blue color, which makes sense if you're having the links like in body text, you know, to differentiate it from the text around it. But when your link is actually in more of like a UI thing like this, or like another example is like if we go like here, this link up here, it's like that doesn't need to be blue. It shouldn't be blue. So we could write our own class for that. But I kind of wonder if there like is some kind of special Bulma link thing. Let's see here. I mean, really, one way of thinking about it is that these links are actually buttons, right? So like, let's put button on here. And that is fine, but we actually want it to be more of a is white or something. Yeah, that's looking good. It does make you feel like maybe that should be on the other side. Now that just looks weird. It makes you think that for now, even having this as a grid at all just doesn't really feel necessary. We could just do like a div and then something like this, and we can make this a span. Oh, yeesh. That shouldn't be underneath the title. Well, that's kind of weird too. Okay, well, whatever. Let's actually put it back to how it was. We will be adding more icons here as well, so it, you know, we can worry about it later. Banned a spammer. Okay. So I'm also going to change this icon up here while I'm thinking about it. Let's see what that's like. So in this layout here, we've got our a.navbar item exercise tracker. So that one is styled fine. The navbar burger, on the other hand, is not. And maybe that, so this, okay, so it is beneath, so there's navbar brand class. And then underneath that is a navbar item. And so this does have roll button, but that shouldn't really matter. And class navbar burger. Doesn't really explain. Well, for now, I might just do it the brute force way. Color, inherit. Now, if we take a look at this again, it should just be the same color as the parent element. And if I click it, the X should also be the same colors. Ooh, look at that fancy transition there. I like that. Okay. I mean, the page is not the best, but we're going to be worrying about that a little bit soon. So I'm just going to leave it as is for now. So this is going to be updating style of exercises page a bit. No need to be too specific here. And then fixing color of nav bar burger button. Oh, okay. Oh. Okie doke. One more thing to do today. I want to make another page here, which might sound like a lot, but we're just splitting a page out into two parts. So really there's not that much actual work involved there. Okay. So let's make a page called historical. And kind of the idea is that this is going to be rendering the historical data for a given exercise. So we've got this get/exercises/id. And just thinking a little bit here. We'll probably be changing this. But for now, I just want to get something out there. Okay, so we're having this historical route here. So doing that, then the regular exercises ID thing does not need the historical sets at all. And the historical one does. It just needs everything. And this one, you know, we could call historical data. Sure. And so this is going to render historical. And similarly, we can take this exercise thing, copy this, paste it over here. And then for the actual exercise page, we're going to get rid of the historical part, which is all of this. So all this has now is the name, settings, stuff. And then for historical, we're going to do the opposite, right? We're going to get rid of all of this. So now we've got our two separate pages, one for when the user is just trying to view the historical data for the exercise, and the other one for when the user is actually trying to change the exercise's settings. I feel like those are two different things. And then in the exercises plural page, now we're actually going to add another button here. And this one is going to go to the historical. And we're going to use a different icon for this, of course. Also, it's another cell, I guess. Maybe the same cell. We'll see what it looks like, the same cell. And we need an icon for this, which is probably going to be something like a chart or a plot. Like this, maybe. Timeline. Chart line. I like that one. Yeah, chart line. Did I use that anywhere else? I feel like that somehow feels familiar. No. Okay. And okay, so now we have our chart line and our edit. Here's where I'm starting to feel like this maybe could actually use like a another parameter for these icons to change the size. So let's actually add that to the icon mix in as well. So here we could say like size. And the default for the size is small. And actually that's not right, because like if we look at the today page, oh, you know, there's some of these other places I forgot to even use the new icon things. Let's do that here. Chevron right. This one's just called X. And so this would be like span.icon.icon small. Do I need to do that inside the button? Maybe. Span.icon.icon small. Let's see what that looks like. And get rid of this medium. Get rid of that medium too. Okay, it is working better. So we can see here that now the button is more square, which is probably part of the benefit of that. And then this could be like medium. I just kind of want it to be a little bigger. That didn't change. That didn't change it at all. Let's see here. Icon. Ooh, you can do colors. I like that. Oh, icon is small. Is medium. Hmm. icon is large. I don't know. I don't know why that's not working exactly. It seems like it kind of is dependent on the icon library you're using, maybe. But for now, this is okay, I guess. And then if I go to the Today page here, I should be able to get rid of these icon smalls because it seems like those aren't actually doing anything then. And let's just make sure that's rendering properly. Today, check, this check, click to another day, check. Okay, seems good. And if I go manage exercises, like for interval sprints, I can do the settings for it and go back, and I can do the historical data for it. And go back, okay. And for both of those, I'm going to, that needs to be title class on the H1, just like it is like on this page, for example. So we can see the historical data and we can edit it. And obviously both of those pages need to be cleaned up. What did I change here? Oh yeah, I added a whole new route. Okay. So add exercise ID historical page. And then fix some icon usages in Today page. Okay. Well, I think we're at a pretty good stopping point. We made some decent progress, getting things a little bit more, dry, using our mix-ins, and kind of improving the UI for some of the other pages. So I feel like we're getting to a decent place in terms of just the UI part. Obviously, the individual exercise page and the historical page are going to kind of be the next thing that we need to improve on that front. And then there's a lot of other things that we're going to want to improve as well. So we're, feels like well past the halfway point. It feels like we're getting close to the point where we could ship this as a working app. But we're far from the finish line in terms of actually making it a quality user experience, which is, of course, the goal. So still got a ways to go yet. Let's do a push. Oh. Okie doke. And that's it. Thanks, y'all. See you next week.